Hello and welcome to this rules explanation video for Halls of Horror. My name's Krzysztof Zięba and I'm the game's designer. Halls of Horror is a horror-themed competitive board game for 1 to 4 players, in which you take on the role of participants in a deadly game set by the nefarious master of the ceremony. To escape with your life, you will need to locate the exit and collect 2 keys needed to open it. Keys can be found by exploring rooms, killing other participants in combat and searching their bodies, or defeating the killer, a bloodthirsty character who roams these halls. There can be only one winner though, everybody else will stay in the house, forever. To set up the game for 4 players, first separate the starting rooms identified by their double faces and the 2 exit cards from the rest of the room cards. Choose a set of room cards, A or B variants, and shuffle the room cards of the chosen variant. Draw 14 cards face down and mix the 2 exit cards in. Then set down the 4 starting rooms so that they make up the corners of the board, and lay 16 room cards in a 4x5 grid. Each player receives a participant card at random. If this is your first game, we recommend using the side with no special powers. Each player receives the corresponding participant miniature, 4 dice, the attack and escape cards, and a set of 5 action cards: up, down, left, right, and search. Place a health token on space 10 of the track of the participant card and give each player 1 resolve token. Then each player places their participant miniature on one of the starting rooms so that everybody starts alone in a room. Take the killer card and set it near the board. Place the killer health token on space 10 of his health track and the killer rage token on the leftmost space of his rage track. Shuffle the Master of the Ceremony deck and set it aside within reach of all players. Shuffle the MC gift tokens face down and keep them in a pile or container within reach of all players. Shuffle the reward card deck and place it within reach of all players. Choose the first player. Our suggestion is the person who watched a horror movie most recently, but feel free to choose another method. That player receives the first player card and can decide where to set the killer miniature. In a 4-player setup, it will be a choice of 1 of 2 spaces. When you select actions during the action selection phase, and you start the turn alone in a room, you must choose one of the 5 action cards to move or search. If you start the turn with another participant or the killer, you instead have to choose the combat attack or combat escape card. Let's cover movement first. To move, choose an up, down, left or right action card. The direction of movement on the board is determined by the edge of the board by which you're sitting, so an up action card might mean a different direction for different players. If you move onto a face down room, you must uncover it and read the text printed on it. Some rooms will lock you in upon entry if you are alone in that room at the end of a turn. If you see that instruction text on the card, you need to place a locked room token on that card. Sometimes, if characters move in opposite directions from adjacent rooms, only one of them will get to move. In such a case, the participant closer to the first player in turn order makes their move, and the participant further from the first player in turn order doesn't move. Their move action is considered cancelled. Choosing the search card may have different effects depending on the circumstances. Its basic function is to search the room that your participant is currently in. Most rooms have a magnifying glass symbol in the lower left corner accompanied by a number. That number indicates how many reward cards you have to draw from the rewards deck when searching this room. If multiple rewards are available in the room, use the following sequence to learn which reward you receive. First, remove all reward cards which are not represented on the room. See if there is a majority of a type of reward card, like 2 or 3 cards of a type. If so, that is the reward you receive. If there is a tie, you take the leftmost reward represented on the room. Each player starts with 1 point of resolve and these tokens can be spent to influence searching. You can spend a point of resolve to draw 2 additional reward cards, remove the ones not represented on the room as usual, and then discard 1 reward card from all of the cards you've drawn before accepting the result. You may spend any number of resolve tokens, but each additional resolve token spent allows you to draw just 1 more reward card, and you can never discard any more than a single card. You receive resolve whenever you are damaged. In that case, you get as many resolve tokens as the damage you were dealt. And also, whenever the reward cards you've drawn yield no reward from the room card you're on. Note that rewards come in 3 variations. If a reward has no frame around it, it is considered to always be available, no matter how many times somebody receives it. If the frame is a square, then it's a one-time reward. When somebody receives it, you should cover the reward on the room card with an exhausted reward marker. From this point onward, the reward is treated as if it wasn't on that room at all. Finally, an octagonal frame means a one-time reward that also exhausts the entire room. When a player receives that type of reward, they need to place the exhausted room marker on the search value of the room in the card's corner to indicate that this room may no longer be searched. A room will also become exhausted if the only rewards left on it are damage or panic rewards. In that case, remove any exhausted reward tokens and place a single exhausted room token on the room's search value. The different rewards are as follows. 2 types of melee weapons, the knife and axe. 2 types of firearms, the pistol and the shotgun. 2 kinds of utility items, the first aid kit and Kevlar vest. 2 kinds of ammunition, bullets and shells. A key token, receiving damage, and the panic card. A player can only ever have 1 card of a given item and 1 panic card, but they may have any number of ammunition tokens and key tokens. If you were ever to receive a reward card that you already own, take a resolve token instead, but mark the reward or room as exhausted, as needed. Note that some rooms might require that you own or spend an item. Usually the items required are the knife or the pistol and bullet. The text found on the room will indicate the specific requirements, and a symbol of the required item can be found on the card. We've covered searching in rooms with a magnifying glass, but note that some rooms show a puzzle piece instead. These are puzzle rooms, and searching them works a bit differently. You draw the indicated amount of reward cards as normal, but you're looking for any pair of identical cards instead of a particular reward. In case of a single-step puzzle room, you will either find a pair and receive the reward, or have no pairs, receive the penalty, and be free to move on. However, some puzzle rooms lock behind you if you are the only participant in the room. In that case, if you do not find a pair in the first turn of searching, you have to place an exhausted reward token on the leftmost reward printed on the room. The value beneath that reward will then tell you how many cards you will draw the next time you search here. Such a puzzle room only opens once you successfully find a pair of cards, or if you fail a number of times, in which case you receive the penalty and the room opens. In both cases, the room is also exhausted. Note that you can use resolve in puzzle rooms to receive additional cards as usual. Time to move to combat. When you start the turn in a room with another participant or the killer, you need to choose the attack or escape combat card instead of the regular action cards. Depending on the cards you and your opponent choose, you may see a different outcome. Refer to the attack and escape cards for the particular combinations. We will now cover the basics of combat. After the cards for the turn are revealed and a combatant's turn comes along, all players involved in that combat may roll their 4 dice. Depending on the card chosen, attack or escape, and the weapons in the player's possession, the margin of success is either a 4, 5, and 6 or a 5 and 6. Rolling 4 dice means that you can have from 0 to a maximum of 4 successes. The player with the most successes resolves the effect of his chosen card. In case of a tie, the attack and escape cards indicate what happens. Resolve can be spent during combat to reroll dice. You can reroll any number of failed dice for the first point of resolve spent, and resolve 1 additional die with each subsequent resolve token spent. Note that you can keep rerolling a single die multiple times. If both players would like to use resolve in combat, the first player to do so must be the player sitting closest in turn order to the first player. The combatants can then take turns spending resolve and rerolling dice until both decide to accept the result, or have no more resolve to spend. The basic attack card deals 2 damage on a success. Weapons will increase that amount to 3, 4 or 5, and may also increase the success margin. Note that firearms require the spending of matching ammunition before they can be used in combat. Bullets for the pistol and shells for the shotgun. As mentioned before, anytime a participant receives damage, they also receive resolve in the same amount. If a participant owns the Kevlar vest item, the first damage dealt to him in combat is ignored. If multiple sources of damage exist, such as when the participant takes part in combat with several enemies, only the first source of damage, in regular player order, is cancelled. The Kevlar vest item is then discarded. If a participant successfully escapes, they can move to any adjacent room as normal. If they move to a face-down room, they uncover it as usual. If multiple players choose to escape, they choose their destinations in turn order. Combat against the killer is similar, but has some key differences. The killer is controlled by the first player, or the master of the ceremony later on in the game, and that player should roll the dice for the killer. The amount of dice rolled is indicated by the killer's current rage, as is the damage he deals on a successful attack. The killer always attacks and wins on ties, but cannot use resolve to reroll dice. Reducing the killer to 0 HP also resets his rage to its basic leftmost value, and is one of the ways a player may receive a key, but only the first player to do so gets this reward. If the killer remains alone in the room after a combat round, usually because the participant there escaped or died, the killer becomes stunned. To indicate this, place the killer's miniature on its side. When the killer becomes stunned, you always reduce his rage by 1. A stunned killer is treated as if he wasn't in the room. Players can search there and move through it without triggering combat. Once all actions have been fully completed, the first player draws a Master of the Ceremony card from the deck. These cards influence the killer and the board in different ways, and the instructions found on them will give you details as to what options you have. Most of these cards will include an instruction and a number of killer symbols. These symbols have to be spent by the player resolving the card, and can be used for the following options. If the killer is stunned, he has to be activated as a priority. To do this, the card has to supply the player with at least 2 symbols. An activated killer is placed in his regular upright position. A single killer symbol can be spent to increase the killer's HP by 1. If the killer's HP is 0, this option takes priority over activating the killer. The killer's rage can also be increased for 1 killer symbol, regardless of whether the killer is stunned or activated. If the killer is activated, a single killer symbol can move him to one of the adjacent rooms. The killer may move several times in a turn, but note that he cannot enter or pass through locked rooms, and has to stop in the first room with a participant that he passes through. There are a few uses of the search card we haven't covered yet. Some of the Master of the Ceremony cards allow for placing of MC gift tokens on the rooms. To pick up an MC gift token, a player only needs to choose the search action. However, if that room could be normally searched, the player needs to choose one option or the other. He only needs to do so as his turn comes along. Additionally, the search action can be used to discard a panic card if a participant is under its effect. A panic card will decrease the number of cards drawn during searching and will force the player to re-roll a single success in combat. Searching can also be used to spend a first aid kit card and heal 3 HP. Whenever one of the participants dies, their miniature is placed on its side in a room. The first participant to fall becomes the Master of the Ceremony. A card indicates that player's new status. At the end of each turn, he will draw 2 Master of the Ceremony cards and choose one of them to play, placing the other one on the bottom of the deck. He also controls the killer and rolls dice for him from this point onward. A player who dies needs to close 2 rooms on the board. The closing of rooms takes place before the Master of the Ceremony card for this turn is played. The player can choose any empty exhausted room or an empty starting room to lock. If these are unavailable, a player can choose any empty room as long as it doesn't have the key reward still available. When the player locks a room, they must make sure that this will not block any participants or the killer's path to any of the exits or remaining participant bodies. A locked room is flipped, and a locked room token is placed on the room. From this point onward, no miniature can end their movement on or pass through that room. A participant body can be searched to take all of that participant's items and to receive 1 additional key as a guaranteed reward. Any player who receives 1 or more keys during a turn must also lock the same number of rooms as the number of keys found according to the aforementioned rules. If multiple players lose their participants, they share the Master of the Ceremony card, which travels around the table at the same time as the first player card. The more Master of the Ceremony players there are, the bigger the selection of cards they can choose from. The first player to successfully search an exit wins the game. Searching the exit usually requires owning 2 keys and is resolved like a puzzle room. The player draws a number of reward cards and looks for pairs, can use resolve during that search, etc. A failed search usually has no consequences, and a success means that player is the winner. Alternatively, if a team of Master of the Ceremony players manage to kill the final participant, they are the winners. Thank you for watching this rules explanation video for Halls of Horror. If you like what you saw, please join us for the game's Kickstarter campaign, which starts on the 15th of May.